The young couple sat across from me, their expensive engagement ring glinting under the office lights. Both adamant they were ready for marriage despite being together only 4 months. When I asked them why, his answer chilled the room. Everyone else our age is getting married, and she checks all the right boxes. Good family, successful career, wants kids, and she's not high maintenance. Plus, my parents love her. She nodded in agreement, adding he's stable, responsible, and my friends think we make a perfect match. Neither of them once mentioned love, passion, or deep connection. They had perfectly planned their path to average love, and they wore their mediocrity like a badge of honor. She sat across from me, tears streaming down her face, clutching a wedding photo that represented 15 years of what she called love. But I'm not unhappy, she insisted, her voice trembling with uncertainty. We have our routines. We're comfortable. Isn't that what love becomes after so many years? That moment crystallized something I've observed countless times in my decades of working with people. How readily we settle for average love, mistaking comfort for fulfillment, routine for connection, and absence of conflict for genuine peace. You're here today because somewhere deep inside, you know you've been accepting less than you deserve, less than you're capable of giving, less than what love truly means. You've been telling yourself stories. Stories about being realistic, about not expecting too much, about how this is just how relationships work. But what if everything you believe about love is based on a fundamental misunderstanding? What if the very definition of love you've accepted is keeping you trapped in mediocrity? Right now, in this room, there are people who wake up every morning next to someone they once felt passionate about, yet now they feel nothing but a dull ache of emptiness. There are others who stay in relationships that barely scratch the surface of their souls, convincing themselves that deep connection is just a fantasy sold by romance novels and movies. The truth? You're not afraid of being alone. You're afraid of acknowledging that what you've accepted as love is merely a shadow of what's possible. Think about your morning routine with your partner. Is it filled with genuine moments of connection? Or is it a carefully choreographed dance of avoiding real intimacy? When was the last time you looked into their eyes, truly looked, and felt that electric current of genuine connection? Average love is subtle in its mediocrity. It doesn't announce itself with dramatic fights or obvious red flags. Instead, it creeps in through small compromises, through the quiet acceptance of good enough, through the gradual dimming of your expectations, until you can barely remember what it felt like to want more. Average love is when you share a bed but not your dreams. It's when you talk about schedules but not your fears. It's when you exist in the same space but live in entirely different emotional universes. If you could measure the gap between the love you dreamed of and the love you're living, how wide would that chasm be? If you could quantify the distance between your heart's deepest longings and your daily reality, what would that number look like? This isn't about finding fault or placing blame. This is about awakening to the possibility that you've been sleeping through your own love story. It's about recognizing that somewhere along the way, you started believing that passion fades, that deep connection is unsustainable, that settling is mature. But here's what nobody tells you about average love. It's more exhausting than being alone, because maintaining mediocrity requires constant suppression of your soul's natural longing for depth, for truth, for real connection. Every time you swallow your words to keep the peace, every time you deny your needs to maintain harmony, every time you choose comfort over growth, you're not just accepting average love. You're actively participating in the diminishment of your own spirit. I've witnessed thousands of relationships, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that extraordinary love exists. Not just in the beginning, not just in the movies, but as a sustainable, growing, evolving force that enriches rather than depletes. Extraordinary love isn't about grand gestures or perfect harmony. It's about two people committed to seeing each other completely, to growing individually and together, to choosing each other actively every day, rather than staying together out of habit or fear. What makes love extraordinary isn't the absence of challenges. It's how you face them together. It's not about never feeling fear. It's about being brave enough to share that fear with each other. It's not about always agreeing. It's about staying curious about each other's perspectives, even in disagreement. But here's the crucial truth. You cannot attract extraordinary love while accepting average love. You cannot create deep connection while maintaining shallow patterns. You cannot experience the fullness of love while operating from emptiness. The transformation begins with honesty. Raw, uncomfortable, liberating honesty. What are you pretending not to know about your relationship? What truths have you been dancing around? What parts of yourself have you been hiding to maintain the status quo? Average love thrives on autopilot. It flourishes in the realm of unspoken expectations and unexpressed needs. It grows stronger with every compromise that erodes your spirit, with every silence that should have been filled with truth. But you're not here by accident. You're not reading these words by chance. Something in you is ready to break free from the prison of average love. Something in you knows that you were meant for more depth, more truth, more aliveness in your relationships. The first step toward extraordinary love isn't finding the right person. It's becoming the right person. It's doing the inner work to understand why you've accepted less than you deserve. It's examining the beliefs that have kept you tethered to mediocrity. What would happen if you raised your standards? Not just in what you expect from others, but in what you demand from yourself in relationships. What if you decided that from this moment forward, you would no longer participate in the dance of average love? Perhaps you're thinking, but what if I raise my standards and end up alone? Let me ask you this, are you not already alone in your average relationship? Is sharing a space but not your soul not a more profound kind of loneliness than physical solitude? The most dangerous thing about average love is how it teaches us to doubt our own instincts. We feel the emptiness, we sense the disconnection, but we've been conditioned to believe that asking for more is somehow selfish or unrealistic. Let me share something profound with you. Your longing for deeper love isn't selfish. It's sacred. That aching in your heart when you know something's missing. That's not dysfunction. That's your soul speaking to you in the only language it knows, the language. Think about the messages we've internalized about love. Don't rock the boat. Be grateful for what you have. All relationships become routine, eventually. These aren't universal truths. They're the mantras of mediocrity. They're the lullabies we sing to ourselves to justify staying stuck in situations that don't serve our highest good. Every time you accept average love, you're not just affecting your own life. You're contributing to a collective lowering of standards. You're sending a message to your children, your friends, your community about what's acceptable in relationships. You're unknowingly becoming part of the problem you wish someone would solve. The cost of average love extends far beyond your romantic relationship, seeps into every aspect of your life. When you consistently suppress your need for deeper connection, you start showing up as an average version of yourself, and your work becomes average. Your friendships become average. Your relationship with yourself. But here's where it gets interesting and challenging. The journey from average to extraordinary love isn't about finding someone who completes you. It's about becoming so complete in yourself that you can no longer tolerate incomplete connections. This is where most people get it wrong. They think extraordinary love is about finding someone who checks all the boxes, who meets all their needs, who fills all their empty spaces. But extraordinary love isn't about filling spaces. It's about creating them. It's creating space for growth, for truth, for transformation. When was the last time you felt truly alive in your relationship? Not just content, not just comfortable, but fully, vibrantly alive. When was the last time a conversation with your partner left you feeling more expanded, more inspired, more connected to your own truth? If you're struggling to remember, you're not alone. But don't mistake this common experience for a normal one. Average love has become epidemic because we've collectively agreed to call it normal. Here's what extraordinary love looks like in real life. It's two people who understand that their relationship is a vehicle for their individual and shared growth. It's the courage to say, I'm scared, instead of acting out in anger. It's the wisdom to know that comfort zones are where dreams go to die. Extraordinary love is when you can sit in silence together and feel more connected than ever. It's when challenges bring you closer instead of driving you apart. It's when you can share your darkest thoughts and your wildest dreams without fear of judgment. Extraordinary might make you uncomfortable. Extraordinary love demands extraordinary courage, the courage to be seen fully, the courage to see others fully, the courage to let go of relationships that keep you small even when they feel safe. You might be thinking, but my partner isn't interested in this kind of depth. That's a valid concern, but it's also potentially an excuse. Have you truly invited them into deeper connection? Have you shown up with complete authenticity and invited them to do this? Or have you been hiding behind the comfortable routines of average love? The transformation from average to extraordinary love begins with a decision, not a decision to find someone new, but a decision to be someone new. Someone who refuses to participate in superficial connections. Someone who has the courage to speak their truth, even when their voice shakes. This isn't about dramatic gestures or ultimatums. It's about quiet, consistent commitment to authenticity. It's about small moments of truth that accumulate into a revolution of the heart. Start with yourself. Begin noticing the ways you've been complicit in maintaining average love. Notice how you avoid difficult conversations. Notice how you pretend everything's fine when your soul is screaming for more. Notice how you've learned to numb yourself to the absence of real connection. The path to extraordinary love requires you to become uncomfortable with comfort. It requires you to question everything you've accepted as normal. It requires you to risk the security of what you have for the possibility of what could be. But here's the beautiful paradox. When you stop accepting average love, when you start showing up fully in your relationships, one of two things happens. Either your current relationship transforms into something deeper and more meaningful, or it naturally dissolves to make space for connections that match your new level of authenticity. Either way, you win. Because the worst kind of loneliness isn't being single, it's being in a relationship where you can't be your true self. The worst kind of emptiness isn't having no one to talk to, it's having someone to talk to but nothing real to say. Think about the legacy you're creating with your choices around love. What messages are you sending to the next generation about what they should expect from relationships? What stories are you telling with your actions about what love looks like in real life? Every time you accept average love, you're not just settling in your own life, you're contributing to a world where settling is normal. You're adding your voice to the chorus that says, this is as good as it gets. But what if it isn't? What if everything you've accepted as normal in relationships has been preparing you for this moment of awakening? What if your dissatisfaction isn't a sign that you're ungrateful, but a sign that you're ready for more? The moment you decide to stop accepting average love is the moment everything begins to shift. Not always in ways you can see immediately, but in the deepest parts of your being. Your energy changes, your vibration shifts. The universe starts responding differently to you because you're sending out different signals. Many of us have become masters at rationalization. We tell ourselves stories about why average is acceptable. At least they're not abusive. They're a good provider. They're a good parent. While these qualities are important, they're the bare minimum, not the ceiling of what's possible in love. Let me share something powerful with you. Every time you say yes to average love, you're saying no to extraordinary love. Every time you settle for less than what your heart truly desires, you're blocking the path for what could be. Think about how you show up in your relationships right now. Are you bringing your full self to the table? Or are you bringing a carefully edited version, one that's easier to love, easier to accept, less likely to rock the boat? The irony is that in trying to make ourselves more lovable, we often make ourselves less authentic. And it's impossible to experience extraordinary love through an inauthentic self. It's like trying to see the full spectrum of colors through sunglasses. The limitation isn't in what's available, but in how we're perceiving it. There's a truth that might shake you. The quality of love you accept is directly proportional to the quality of love you believe you deserve. Not what you say you deserve. Not what you intellectually know you deserve, but what you believe in your core you deserve. This is where the real work begins, because changing your love life isn't about changing your partner or finding a new one. It's about changing your relationship with yourself. It's about healing the parts of you that believe average is all you're worthy of. Think about your earliest experiences with love. What did they teach you about what to expect? What did they teach you about what you deserve? These early lessons become the unconscious blueprint for our adult relationships. But here's the liberating truth. You can create a new blueprint. The journey from average to extraordinary love requires you to become uncomfortable with the comfortable. It requires you to question everything you've accepted as normal. When was the last time you asked yourself what you really want in a relationship? Not what's realistic, not what you think you can get, but what you truly desire. Most people never ask these deeper questions because they're afraid of the answers. They're afraid that once they acknowledge what they really want, they'll have to face how far their current reality is from their desires. But that gap, that uncomfortable space between what is and what could be, that's where transformation begins. Extraordinary love isn't found in perfect moments. It's found in perfect presence. It's found in the courage to stay open when everything in you wants to close. It's found in the willingness to be vulnerable when your past experiences scream at you to protect yourself. What if the challenges in your relationships aren't obstacles to overcome, but invitations to evolve? What if every disagreement, every moment of disconnection, every feeling of dissatisfaction is actually life asking you, are you ready for more or are you ready to grow? The path to extraordinary love requires a revolution of consciousness. It requires you to question every belief you've held about what's possible in relationships. It requires you to examine every compromise you've made, every boundary you've lowered, every truth you've swallowed. Here's what nobody tells you about extraordinary love. It's not always comfortable. In fact, it's often uncomfortable because it constantly calls you to grow, to expand, to become more of who you truly are. But this discomfort is different from the discomfort of average love. Average love's discomfort depletes you. Extraordinary love's discomfort expands you. Think about a time when you absolutely knew that something wasn't right in your relationship, but you talked yourself out of that knowing. That's not peace you're choosing. That's avoidance. And avoidance, while comfortable in the short term, is soul-destroying in the long term. The quality of your love life is a direct reflection of your relationship with truth. How honest can you be with yourself? How honest can you be with your partner? How much truth can you tolerate in your relationships? Average love survives on half-truths. I'm fine when you're not fine. It doesn't matter when it matters deeply. Whatever you want, when you actually have a preference you're afraid to express. These small denials of truth accumulate over time, creating a relationship built on shifting sand rather than solid ground. But extraordinary love thrives on truth. Not truth wielded as a weapon, but truth offered as a gift. Truth spoken not to hurt, but to heal. Truth expressed not to distance, but to create genuine intimacy. What truths have you been hiding? What needs have you been denying? What parts of yourself have you been keeping small to maintain the peace in your relationships? The journey to extraordinary love isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming real. It's about having the courage to show up as you are and allow others to do the same. It's about creating relationships where growth is celebrated, where challenges are welcomed as opportunities for deeper connection, where truth is valued above comfort. Consider the possibility that every relationship in your life, even the difficult ones, especially the difficult ones, is there to teach you something about love. What if your average relationships aren't failures but stepping stones? What if they're not mistakes, but necessary chapters in your love story? The transformation from average to extraordinary love requires a fundamental shift in how you show up in your relationships. It requires you to stop being a passenger in your love life and become an active creator. It requires you to stop waiting for someone to love you the way you want to be loved and start loving yourself that way first. Your capacity for extraordinary love is like a muscle. It grows stronger with use, but it can also atrophy when neglected. Every time you choose truth over comfort, authenticity over approval, growth over stagnation, you're strengthening this. Every time you settle for less, you're weakening it. Let's talk about what happens in the body when you're living with average love. There's a constant low-grade tension, a subtle but persistent anxiety. Your shoulders might be slightly raised, your breath might be slightly shallow, your jaw might be slightly clenched. This is your body's way of telling you that you're living out of alignment with your truth. The body never lies. When you're in an average relationship, your body knows before your mind admits it. That mysterious fatigue, those unexplained headaches, that constant sense of heaviness. These aren't just random symptoms. They're messages from your deepest self saying, this isn't enough. This isn't what we're here for. But here's where it gets interesting. The same body that alerts you to the presence of average love also guides you toward extraordinary love. When you're in the presence of authentic connection, your body relaxes, your breath deepens, your energy expands, your whole being says yes to the experience. Think about the last time you felt truly seen and understood by another person. Remember how your body felt in that moment. That sensation, that alignment, that rightness, that's your internal compass pointing toward extraordinary love. The path from average to extraordinary love requires you to become fluent in this body language. It requires you to trust these subtle signals, these quiet whispers from your soul. Because extraordinary love isn't just about what you think or what you do. It's about how fully you allow yourself to feel. What if the reason you've settled for average love isn't because you don't deserve better, but because you've never fully allowed yourself to want better? What if your capacity for extraordinary love has been waiting dormant within you, like a seed waiting for the right conditions to bloom? The journey to extraordinary love demands that you become comfortable with uncertainty. Average love offers the illusion of security, the comfort of knowing what to expect, even if what you expect isn't what you truly want. Extraordinary love requires you to step into the unknown, to trust that what awaits you is greater than what you're leaving behind. What would love look like if you removed all your limitations, if you stripped away every but, every what if, every that's not realistic? What would you allow yourself to desire if you truly believed anything was possible? This isn't about fantasy. This is about expanding your vision of what's possible in love. Because the truth is, you can't create what you can't imagine. You can't attract what you can't conceive of. Your vision of what's possible becomes the ceiling of what you can expect. The transformation from average to extraordinary love requires you to examine your relationship with vulnerability. Average love thrives on emotional safety, sharing only what's comfortable, revealing only what's acceptable. But extraordinary love demands complete emotional nakedness. Think about how much energy you spend maintaining your emotional walls. The careful calculations about what to share and what to hide. The mental gymnastics of trying to be authentic while still being acceptable. What if you redirected all that energy into actually connecting? The parts of yourself that you're most afraid to show are often the parts that are most capable of creating extraordinary connection. Your wounds, your fears, your deepest longings, these aren't obstacles to love, they're gateways to it. When you hide these parts of yourself, you're not just protecting yourself from pain, you're also blocking your capacity for extraordinary love. Because extraordinary love isn't found in the spaces where we're perfect. It's found in the spaces where we're real. Consider the relationships in your life right now. How many of them know the real you? Not the polished version, not the acceptable version, but the raw, unedited, completely authentic you. And if the answer is none, what does that tell you about the quality of connection you're allowing in your life? The journey to extraordinary love requires you to become a guardian of your own heart. Not by building walls, but by establishing standards. Standards about how you'll allow yourself to be treated. Standards about how you'll show up in relationships. Standards about what you'll accept and what you'll release. But the crucial distinction, these standards aren't about demanding perfection from others. And they're about committing to authenticity in yourself. They're about deciding that you'd rather be alone than compromise your truth. They're about choosing growth over comfort, depth over safety. Think about the messages you send to the universe through your choices in love. Every time you accept less than what you truly desire, you're saying, this is what I'm worth. Every time you settle for average connection, you're declaring, this is all I deserve. But what if you started sending different messages? What if every choice you made in love came from a place of self-worth rather than fear? What if every relationship you engaged in was an expression of your highest truth rather than your deepest? The transformation from average to extraordinary love isn't just about changing your relationships. It's about changing your relationship with yourself. It's about becoming someone who naturally attracts extraordinary love because anything less feels out of alignment with who you are. This is where most people get stuck. They want extraordinary love, but they're not willing to become extraordinary themselves. They want deep connection, but they're not willing to go deep within themselves. They want authentic relationships, but they're not willing to be authentic. But you're not most people. You're here because something in you knows there's more. Something in you is ready to stop settling, ready to stop pretending, ready to stop accepting average love as your destiny. The universe responds to courage. When you have the courage to release what's not serving you, to speak your truth even when your voice shakes, to stay open even when everything in you wants to close. That's when extraordinary love becomes not just possible. Each breath you take in average love costs you something precious. Your potential for extraordinary connection. Every moment spent rationalizing mediocrity dims the light of what's possible in your heart. This isn't about timing or readiness. This is about recognizing that your soul has always known what your mind is finally understanding. Look around this room. Feel the resonance of truth in your body, that sensation, that alignment, that knowing. It's not random. It's your inner wisdom recognizing itself in these words, in this moment, in this collective awakening to what's possible. And the whispers of your heart have never been wrong. Every time you felt that subtle discontent, that quiet longing for more, it wasn't dysfunction or ingratitude. It was your authentic self refusing to be silenced by the comfort of average. Your past relationships weren't failures. They were initiations. Each one showed you something essential about yourself, about love, about what you will and won't accept. They weren't wrong turns on your path. They were the path itself, leading you to this profound realization. Extraordinary love isn't a destination. It's not something you achieve and then coast. It's a conscious choice you make with every interaction, every word, every silence. It's how you love yourself when no one is watching. It's how you honor your truth when it would be easier to compromise. Extraordinary love isn't something you find. It's something you become. As you elevate your standards for the love you'll accept, you naturally elevate your capacity to give love. As you refuse to participate in surface-level connections, you create space for depth that astounds you. Let this be your declaration. I am worthy of extraordinary love, not because I'm perfect, but because I'm real. Not because I've earned it, but because it's my natural state. Not because I'm special, but because this is what love was always meant to. Your soul has been waiting for you to claim this truth. Every heartbreak, every disappointment, every moment of settling, they've all led you here to this recognition, to this awakening, to this reclamation of your power, to choose differently. You're not alone in this awakening. Every person who has ever dared to demand more from love walks with you. Their courage amplifies yours. Their truth strengthens yours. Their choices create ripples that reach across time and space to support the extraordinary love you seek lives within you. It always has. It pulses in your veins, whispers in your dreams, and guides your deepest knowing. You don't need to search for it. You need only to remove everything that blocks its natural expression. This is your sacred remembering. This is your return to truth. This is your claiming of what has always been yours. In extraordinary love, we discover our true nature. We remember who we were before we learned to accept less. We become who we were always meant to be. You are extraordinary love.